Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. John, Novo Resources was slammed as low as $5.03 today after providing the market with an update about Purdy's reward. What is the market so disappointed about?
The market is unhappy because any material new information about the great potential of Purdy's reward and the Pilbara conglomerate in general has now been pushed into January. There were about 4 disappointments that I identified in this news release that came out this morning. The first was that the experimentation that they did with the large diameter drilling, where they were using 17.5-inch wide holes, the reverse circulation style, to go down to the conglomerate beds and recover a sample. They apparently are unhappy with the quality and consistency of the sample and do not feel that it will be useful for effective for grade estimation purposes. So they've in essence scrapped that bulk sampling strategy, which would have assessed the conglomerate bed on a down dip basis. So that's one of the key questions in my 3-pronged WITS 2.0 hypothesis. Is there a cost-effective and reliable way of measuring the gold content of these conglomerate beds where the gold is very nuggety? And the news today says, well, we do not have a reliable method, which means that ultimately down the road it'll have to go to underground bulk sampling, which is not going to be very cost effective. The company has retreated to focusing on the trench, and Artemis Resources, which before they did the deal with Novo back in April, May, had applied for a 20,000-ton bulk sample, which has just been granted by the Western Australia Department of Mines. So that is going to come in handy. It's not clear where the bulk sample would be processed. Artemis has a sort of a 1,200 ton per day plant, the Radio Hill plant, where it could be conceivably processed, but that's not going to be ready until the second half of next year. It needs about $5 million worth of refurbishment work. So Novo in this news release said we are going to, in the near term, focus on the portion of the bed where it daylights. It's now exposed along 1,000 meters, and their scout drilling program has established its presence from 100 to 400 meters down dip. So we've got a reasonably big footprint established. But another disappointment was that they said the fine gold that they had hoped might be systemically present within the conglomerate bed appears to be associated with the nuggets themselves. They've got a cross-section, sort of a thin section, a cut polished face of a nugget on its side, and you can see a halo about several meters extending beyond the nugget itself. And this apparently is caused by remobilization of the gold from the nugget into the surrounding matrix by metamorphic pressures created through the burial of the conglomerate as more and more formations of the Fortescue group piled up on top, and of course it gets deeper, and so you get metamorphic pressures. Now, the bad news about this is that the hope that we could use scout drilling to establish a baseline gold grade based on the fine gold, that's pretty much down the toilet, because if the fine gold merely rings the nuggets, well, the nuggets are randomly distributed, and the small 2-inch, 3-inch diameter core is unlikely to hit the nugget and the surrounding fine gold. And the sort of 9 grams per ton that they measured in the 542 kilo sample that they processed or published in early August, they now figure, well, the fine gold is related to the material surrounding the nuggets. So again, this hurts the idea of getting a cost-effective way of measuring the gold in this system. Now, another disappointment that was in the news release is that the Nagram facility, where they had set up a new Steinert sorting machine, it ran into delays and problems optimizing the machine. Those appear to be solved, but what this means is that those 30 or so drums of 500 to 1,000 kilos of sample that they have taken out from the trenched exposure of the conglomerate bed, we're not going to see those results until January, because if they are just getting started now, it's unlikely we are going to get any news. And this news is important because we really don't know how grade behaves in different parts of these beds. We have only one data point, and if they get sort of several dozen data points along the exposed part of the conglomerate bed, and they all end up having a minimum gold content, that will give us a sense of what the average grade is going to be. And the question now is still, if it's 2 grams per ton average, we don't have a mine in the Pilbara. We just have a wonderful scientific curiosity. On the other hand, if it starts getting 5 grams per ton or higher, then we have something very, very interesting, especially as part of the WITS 2.0 hypothesis, the synbiogenic theory that the gold nuggets were formed through some sort of precipitation process in a marine environment assisted by bacterial activity. Now, there's one more disappointment in that news release, and they have said that the gold nuggets appear to be concentrated not just in the mafic clast-rich lower part of the conglomerate sequence, but it seems to be in the base of that sequence. So that has negative implications for the tonnage potential. They've described the beds as having a true thickness of 4 meters to 15 meters thick. But if it's the only, let's say, 4 to 8 meter bottom portion is the mafic clast-rich portion where the gold nuggets are in the matrix, if it turns out that it's at the very base of that the nuggets are concentrated, that reduces the kind of tonnage calculations, because the general assumption is still that these beds are going to be laterally extensive. What you find in there in terms of gold content, it's going to exist over a very large area. So then the question becomes one of thickness. If we're only dealing with 1 to 2 meter thicknesses, we have smaller tonnage implications than we initially hoped for with the bigger thicknesses. They did point out that there are these black chlorite-rich shale fragments that seem to be spatially associated whenever they find the nuggets. They don't offer an explanation, so I kind of ask, what is the point of including this tidbit in the news release? I have a suspicion that what they're hinting is that these shale fragments could prove to be an important marker within these conglomerate beds, so that when it comes time to decide where do we drive an adit to go in there and bulk sample the bed, they will know exactly where they need to intersect the bed in order to get the nugget-bearing portion of the conglomerate bed. So the stock has retreated because obviously no significant news until next year. There'll be an update in middle of December, but that probably will not give us any quantitative information about the gold potential. And Novo has, bounced back to 550 or so. The general WITS 2.0 hypothesis remains intact. A large group of analysts visited the property just over a week ago. This is an opportunity for them to think about all this. The feedback I'm getting is that some of them at least are very impressed with the scale of this system and are joining the group such as myself that this is something very, very big. I think in terms of the grade potential, it's more a delay than a setback in terms of what the grade is going to be. But that's the way it's going to be, and for those who aren't on board Novo or Artemis Resources, this is an opportunity to do some Christmas shopping in December.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, Arizona Silver put out news from the Ramsey project and was slammed by the market. Was the news really that bad?
The news was not spectacular, and it wasn't terrible. And the day the news came out, the stock held in the mid-20s. But then a day or so later, all of a sudden, it's down at 18, 19 cents. And it turns out that somebody had a margin call, and whoever ended up being in charge of that, the compliance department, went and picked Arizona Silver and liquidated a large position, dumped it into the market, probably because there were bids down there for the stock. But it painted the tape and made the market think, okay, these results really suck. This is bad, so let's back off from this company. The news itself included the 5 more holes from the drilling that they did on the Ramsey zone in an eastern direction. Now, from earlier this year, the Ramsey hypothesis was the idea that off to the west was a large bulk tonnage system running maybe 2 to 4 ounces per ton silver that could be open pit mine, which is different from the 10-20 ounce per ton Ramsey vein, which was a fairly narrow vein. That hypothesis proved to be false. Drilling killed it, pounded a stake into its heart. But in stepping eastwards from the Ramsey vein, they noticed that the system is flattening and thickening. They've got running room of about 700 meters by 250 meters to the east. When I visited the project back in, I believe it was May, June, we walked over this area. It's an altered rhyolite without any obvious mineralization outcropping anywhere. But they now believe that underneath this is a silver system. They plan to go back and drill it. The grades are coming in this sort of 15 to 60 gram per ton. It's not as high as we would like it to be, but the economics could still work out if it turns out to be a nice thick package. The news that came out in mid-month was the results were not as good as the first 2 holes. They weren't quite as thick, and the grades weren't quite as high. And, of course, the company conceded that we do not yet know what the true width is, but they've got a drill plan to step eastwards and start delineating this tabular system. And they mentioned that they did drill that 1 hole into the western IP anomaly. This is the target that has potential significant blue sky for this story. They went through only 15 meters of overburden of gravels. Then they had about 110 meters of country rock, a metasediment that really doesn't explain anything. And then they went through a detachment fault and went into a very strongly altered granitic intrusion with lots of quartz veining, evidence of pyrite within it. Pyrite, of course, is not what you want, but often you see a pyrite shell on the peripheries of a system, and it's often what explains the IP anomaly. They only pushed it to about 213 meter depth because this was just a scout hole. They're awaiting assays. They didn't give us any visuals of seeing bornite or chalcopyrite or anything in there, so there's no big hopes that there's going to be anything in there. But there may be background levels of metals that tell us that this altered granitic intrusion is a system that deserves further work. It does outcrop about 5 miles to the west, but it is nowhere near as altered. So something is going on in this area. The assays will probably not be exciting from a grade perspective, but what's in them and what they tell us about this system that may have been driving the Ramsey vein system is going to be a very important news event for this company when they get this news out by the end of the year.
John, Verde Agritech has been all over the map recently. Why the volatility?
The company managed to raise $1.8 million in late July in a $1.05 unit. Shortly after that, the stock started trending down. It was as low as 45 cents. Part of this may have been people selling existing long positions just because there was a downtrend. But that private placement has now come free trading. And the stock popped as high as 90 cents a few days ago on some decent volume. What the company had done as part of that financing in late July was retained a marketing entity called Palisade Global Investments. And this company has a history of doing private placements in company and then somehow securing a marketing contract for the next year where they're supposedly going to do some marketing services and get a chance to sell that position. And they've done this publicly with a company called Thunderstruck, where they ended up owning too much. As soon as the stock came free trading, they dumped it into the market and liquidated it, and that was the end of that promotion for this poor little company trying to establish a VMS system in Fiji. So apparently they did a news interview that got distributed to a large list earlier this week. That jumped the stock up. It's retreated again as the market figured out, it's just one of these little marketing entities, 1-2 day wonder. But the big thing that the company is going to give us is in the next week or so, they're finally going to release the results of a pre-feasibility study they have done on their green sand concept, which involves crushing their Verdeci slate rock from their multi-billion-ton deposit in Brazil. It runs about 9 to 11% potassium. It is a silicate, so it's not the same thing as the potassium chloride salts that come from Saskatchewan. The Brazilian farmers import most of their conventional potassium chloride from places like Canada. This company has tried several processing approaches in the past decade. The first was reviving a whole rock process called thermal potash that involved heat treating the material, which supposedly made the potassium more accessible within the silicate. Then they attempted a potassium chloride conversion, which they did get it to work, but once potash dropped below $300 a ton, the economics of that failed. And then more recently, in the past few years, they discovered that the assumption that the silicate renders the potassium inaccessible was false. That in the soils of Brazil, where there's a considerable microbial populations, this particular type was quite effective in liberating the potassium within this product. So now they have a very simplified business plan where they quarry this material, crush it, and then ship it to the farmers. And they want to start with sort of 300,000 tons of this green sand product each year, and eventually scale it to 25 million tons by 2025, and price it comparable to sort of the imported potash price that the farmers currently rely on. So this is a story that conceivably could have some very big after-tax NPV numbers, and the stock is going to be volatile because they need to establish that there is, in fact, a market for this green sand. Now, because it's locally sourced and Brazil does have a security of supply problem for the fertilizer, there is a good chance it'll get government support, and the farmers will have incentive themselves from a strategic perspective to start using this product. But to what extent does the farming community in Brazil start to use this product, and can the company actually scale up to its 25 million ton per year output? That's going to be the big speculative market. And so the volatility is one day somebody thinks it's going to be fantastic, another day somebody says, well, they're never going to sell very much of this, it's going to be a flop. So the volatility has to do with a bit of a marketing program, the stock, the private placement coming free trading, a pre-feasibility study just around the corner which will tell people what the basic cost numbers are, and then of course the speculation, well, will this product actually be adopted by the farmers? Is this a giant growth story? And given the enormous size of their Verdeci slate deposit, if they can convince the farmers to buy it, they can deliver the product.
We'll have closing comments from John Kaiser right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com. Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork will commence later this year. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, in Zinc Mining announced a $2 million private placement last week. Is the West Desert project in Utah going to see its first drill hole in a decade?
Jim, I certainly hope so. It's been a very long wait. The company has spent money on doing preliminary economic assessments and doing little road shows and waiting for the zinc price to finally go up in a convincing manner so that they can raise the $2-3 million needed to find out if what we already know about West Desert is all there is to know about it. So about a month ago, one of the directors and the large shareholders, Wayne Hubert, who was CEO of Andean Resources, which had a $3.6 billion buyout by Goldcorp back in 2010, he decided to take over from Kerry Curtis as CEO. He has gone out there and pounded the pavement and come up with a financing deal which isn't the greatest from my perspective. It's 20 million units at 10 cents with a half warrant at 15 cents for a couple years. It's being done by Chad Williams' Red Cloud Klondike Strike online funding portal. This is the same group that placed much of the 66-cent Novo private placement back in May of this year. It's part of a whole new genre of marketing where accredited investors sign up for this online portal, and the private placements are made available, and it's kind of a first-come, first-serve type of thing. So we will see if this financing gets snapped up. The money is definitely going into the ground. The first thing they're going to do is drill some holes beneath the former Utah silver mine. There was 2.7 million ounces of very high-grade silver mined and direct shipped from about 20,000 tons of material. A number of decades ago, Cyprus had drilled a deep hole underneath the old workings, hole number 43, and that intercepted multiple intervals of zinc-silver mineralization and a very intriguing copper-zinc mineralization at depth, which was never followed up because the focus of Cyprus back then was in the main skarn deposit of zinc-copper mineralization, where we've got over 50 million tons of sulfide, and for which PEA was delivered a few years ago, which is in the money at current metal prices. So the new plan will first test the possibility of a silver zinc zone about 650 meters east of the main deposit, what they call the mantle target. And then the second prong will be to go deeper after that 3.5% copper interval with the 7.6% zinc interval over 3 meters. Those are very substantial numbers. It shows also an increase in the copper component of the mineralization, which is primarily zinc dominated in the main West Desert deposit. And the third part of this strategy will be to go back to the eastern part of the main deposit. There's a couple of areas where the drill density was insufficient to allow a number of high-grade intersections to be included in the resource estimate. So they'll go in there and drill 2 or 3 holes in there so that they can beef up the resource estimate. So the first 2 prongs of this strategy are designed to deliver a new discovery that becomes a delineation story, perhaps something similar to Hermosa Taylor. And then the third part will be to deliver something more, because it looks like we are finally into our zinc bull market. And if these other 2 expansion potential strategies fail, the company will still have delivered an improvement in the basic resource. And by killing off any expansion potential, they will know, okay, this is what we've got, this is what we need to do, feasibility demonstration on. Here it is, Bay Street. Do you want to go for this? But, of course, the speculative discovery watch story is what's to the east of this system. And there is appetite for this type of story. One of the companies we have not talked about as a discovery watch company is Nunadina Explorations, which has jumped as high as $4 in recent months after pulling several hundred meters of sulfides that include bornite, sphalerite, copper, zinc mineralization between 500 and 800 meter depth in a IP anomaly that has never been tested. And the Silver Queen project goes back to the 70s. It's a high-grade polymetallic vein system that has been poked at by various groups, but in recent years they've established a porphyry copper system, and the current round of drilling is probing deeper into the system using these geophysical surveys, IP surveys, to generate new targets, and coming back with interesting visuals, which if they grade, Nunadina's Silver Queen could be a new discovery that deserves considerably more work. And because there's only 20 million or so shares fully diluted, the stock's valuation here at $3.5, $60-70 million, still has plenty of upside room. If indeed we have a major new deep high-grade discovery, it would have to be something that's block caved underground mine, but it would be similar to like Cascabel of Cornerstone and Sol Gold, or of course the ultimate granddaddy, the Oyu Tolgoi deposit of Ivanhoe in Mongolia. Original copper system never quite had the grade to make it, but deeper drilling revealed a much richer gold copper system.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.